Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. I've got something really special for you today. We're going to be taking a look at all of the maps that time forgot, the lost maps of World of Tanks. So first up, we're looking at Pearl River, a map that was released in patch 8.5 in April 2013. This was a map where the center was very dominant indeed, and we had heavies fighting it out for this corner in here. Often medium tanks would try and make an aggressive push up into the base so they could try and get view range up on the enemy team before they've even left their cap. But doing so was very risky because the enemies would make their way around here or get opportunistic shots to take out the medium and the light tanks that were trying to do that, or alternatively make their own way across, and quite often mediums and lights would have to meet in some kind of corridor of death along here. Rocks and ridge lines provided some cover from artillery, and eventually you had to make a push through a choke point. Hopefully get down to the buildings towards here, alternatively get underneath the ridge line here where you'll be protected from all of the tank destroyers who are likely to be sitting up in these locations, and then try and pressure the enemy base. Generally, medium tanks, light tanks, and tank destroyers made their way along the west of the map to fight it out in a bid to try and reach the enemy base first, or alternatively, maybe just look for opportunities to try and get easy shots on slow heavy tanks, or tanks that are just trying to relocate. While the more heavily armored tanks tried to fight it out along the north of the map. Here there were loads of rocks that you could try and side scrape off, and quite an intricate fight along this part of the map where it divides into 3 narrow passes down a corridor. Fighting along here was a meta in itself. Tanks with gun depression tried to take the high ground, while vehicles with thick turret armor but maybe not quite so much gun depression took the middle, and maybe some more of the side scraping heavies tried to flank around the lower route. I loved fighting in this part of the map. It was one of the more entertaining corridors that Wargaming have produced, because there were multiple ways to still try and flank and turn it into a bit of a brawl. Eventually, when you won this location, it would allow you to progress and to be able to gain some really nice shots into the enemy base, or alternatively some more of the sneaky tanks that maybe are locating up towards the west. I personally really enjoyed Pearl River. I think it was one of the most dynamic and fun maps in the game, but Wargaming removed it in patch 9.10 in September 2015. I think because the center was just too dominant. Whoever controlled these advantageous positions here, here, and here just stopped anybody from being able to cap either base. And I don't think Wargaming liked the design that it just took so long to get along the southwest of the map compared to just going straight through the middle and immediately putting pressure up. So now we're looking at Komarin, one of the most hated maps in World of Tanks history. When this map first came out, when World of Tanks was originally released, there were 2 cap circles, one right here on the map and the other one on the other side here, and there were hardly any ridge lines or buildings to protect the cap circles. Frankly, it was just 2 open zones that could be shot from pretty much anywhere, and it was almost impossible to cap. Unless, of course, your entire team rushed into the cap circle and then tried to push forwards to stop people from interrupting you. This meant that quite often on the original Komarin, the game would end in the first minute with one team rushing into one cap circle, the other one rushing into the other cap circle, and no one bothering to defend. And so the map was removed from the rotation and a new version was released in patch 9.1 with a brand new center, and bases now moved to the back of the map where it will be easier to defend them. Furthermore, on the previous version of Komarin, there were no opportunities to go through the water, and every player literally had to just go in a circle to be able to play this map. Of course, there was still an island in the middle that you could defend, but there were no opportunities to leave the island, only 2 choke points to the north and to the south. The 9.1 version of Komarin was a definite improvement, but the camping nature that we originally saw on Komarin had not changed. And there were just still too many opportunities for tank destroyers and heavy tanks to camp at the back, for people to try and dominate the center and to prevent people from flanking round. And don't even get me started about this southeast corner, which is probably one of the easiest things to defend in World of Tanks. Look, you've got a whole ridge line surrounding it to protect you and force your enemies to have to advance at you down corridors. Wargaming, realizing that they hadn't quite managed to fix the most hated map of World of Tanks, changed it, so I believe either tier 6 or more likely tier 8 tanks could be top tier on this, so tier 9 and tier 10 tanks would never have to play Komarin. However, that still wasn't enough, and they finally removed it for good in patch 9.8. Province was one of the smallest maps in World of Tanks history, along with Ensk at 600 meters squared. It was introduced in patch 7.2 in March 2012, and originally tier 10 tanks could play on Province. When tier 10 tanks could play on Province, quite often you would be spotted before you even left your spawn location. Tanks would try and rush down the valley this way, rush down the valley the other way, manage to spot each other, sometimes catch glimpses on tank destroyers or even self-propelled guns that are trying to cower behind the buildings at the back of the map. Light tanks, medium tanks, and even heavy tanks tried to make a dash for the buildings to be able to spot across and try and get some much needed spotting assistance damage. And it was very clear that Province was one of the most stupid maps that Wargaming had ever released, at least for tier 10. More often than not, vehicles would just be camping behind the building here, waiting for people to try and be brave enough to go into the cap circle. And to be able to dig them out, you'd pretty much have to rush across the map, sometimes often down here, and lose a lot of your hit points unless you were heavily armored or exceedingly lucky in doing so. Wargaming, realizing their mistake, made a dramatic tier change to Province. Now only tier 3 tanks and below could fight on it, but that still wasn't enough, and in patch 9.10 we said goodbye to one of the smallest maps in the game. Northwest was released in patch 8.9 in October 2013, and I think it was quite similar to a Pearl River. There were 3 main avenues that Wargaming tried to encourage you to pass down, but when you went there, you also had multiple opportunities to be able to progress through them. Originally, Northwest was not very balanced at all, with coincidentally the northwest corner of the map being very unfair towards the northern team. Gameplay-wise on Northwest, the heavier tanks decided to gravitate towards the south, where you can try and shoot out at longer ranges and try and progress with some artillery cover. The medium tanks would try and fight through the middle of the map, or alternatively towards the north of the map, with light tanks just trying to spot out from some of the rare bush locations to provide a field of view. The southern team would attack along the west to try and reach the northwest corner on the northwest map, and this is really where the game was won or lost. And the original version of Northwest only lasted 2 patches. In patch 8.11, Wargaming tried to fix it because this northwest corner was just favoring the northern team too much. They put out a big spur along here to try and provide some vision cover for the western team to advance and then be able to fight up this corridor. And further changes were made in patch 9.1, with Wargaming trying to stop the advantage that the northern team had. However, this continued, and they finally admitted this with the win ratio skewed, and it was removed for good in patch 9.7. Dragon's Ridge was a map released in May 2012 in patch 7.3, a map set in China, and I have to admit, it started to push the boundaries of World of Tanks and how the game looked. And this had a profound impact on a lot of lower NPCs, especially 4 years ago. Many players complained of absolutely horrific frame rates on Dragon's Ridge, as it was at that point probably the most beautiful map that Wargaming had released. Gameplay-wise, Dragon's Ridge is incredibly different to the maps that you see in the current rotation. Just look at the height differences on the map. There were lovely opportunities for medium tanks and tank destroyers to work ridges and just gain huge sweeping shots across the map, but still enough vegetation to enable light tanks to perform well and provide view range for their teammates. Alternatively, if you were in a heavy tank or a heavily armored tank destroyer, it's more likely that you're going to fight towards the center of this map, and more often than not, this map kind of descended into this awkward long-range brawl around this corner, where this corner was shooting all the way at the opposite through these trees that we see over here, and quite often a stalemate occurred before Wargaming later on took this map out of the rotation and extended the whole east of this map. This corridor down here provided some progressive fighting in the hope to try and flank around and break the camp that quite often occurred here and here. And so this for me made Dragon's Ridge a very exciting map. There was an opportunity to win along the east, but you didn't feel like you had to go there. You could make your way around the west, especially if you've got a more mobile tank, and if you're a heavy vehicle where you try and dominate the center and then got shots of opportunity across both the east and also the west, as long as of course you had vision. Dragon's Ridge was certainly one of my favorite maps in the game before it was removed in patch 8.4 because of the pressure it put on low-end computers, causing them to have a red screen inside their sniper mode. But hey, 3 to 4 years have passed and Wargaming's game engine is way better than it was then, and also computers are just a little bit better than they were back in 2012. And you know what? I think this is a hidden gem that Wargaming would really add some variety into the matchmaker if they brought back. So hopefully you enjoyed this trip down memory lane. If you did and you want to see another one of these videos for the remaining lost maps, then give this video a like and let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.